And really, that alone, if you do it with genuine fascination and motivation, will get you lucid. All of the expensive courses, everything else, you can throw them in the bin. When you look for self, even just sort of introspection, you can't find it. Wherever you point, it's not there. It's okay. Is it language? No, it's not that. That's just a modeling system. Is it memory? No, that's just also a form of modeling system. Is it qualia? No, that's kind of a non-linguistic modeling system that seems to be one of the base operating systems of the mind. But it's nowhere. 1 minute you're on the sofa napping. I've got to the age where I nap a lot. And then you're floating up, you're watching your body and just thinking, crikey, this is genuinely, it feels magical. And it was some kind of AI of the future that was just making all this happen. And then I sort of woke up from that and was like, okay, well, that's pulled the rug from underneath my feet and I'm gonna have to think about that one for a while. Move over DMT, that's way more weird. That is my number one question in life, is what the hell is this? There's a group that really should be super into astral projection, which is blind people. Because what astral projection is saying that you can leave your body and experience the world.
I guess my question to you would be this. Is it about the technique, or is there a mindset that's better to understand? What's happening, guys? So today we have Daniel Love on the podcast. He is hands down the most advanced lucid dreamer we've ever spoken to on this channel. Okay, so it was pretty epic. He has a beautiful mindset. He has kind of one of those minds where he doesn't just accept things because it happened to him. He's very analytical, but also he doesn't, he's not, he said it in the show, he's not just like shooting down all the spiritual stuff that's going on. He kind of approaches things with that analytical mind, which I think is very important when you're dealing with this space, especially when you're dealing with like lucid dreams and they're kind of trippy anyways. So you need people like him. So I thought it was a fantastic conversation. He drops his number one tip for having a lucid dream. I thought it was brilliant. I literally was like, whoa, that's actually really, really good. So he does that in this episode, and he has a lot of techniques on his channel. And so for him to drop that number one tip for us, I thought was pretty cool. Guys, my only goal next year is to do this podcast full time. It's what I know I'm supposed to do. I love having these conversations for you guys. So much fun. So I'm running and gunning for that. I'm going to ramp up the interviews and all kinds of cool stuff on the back end. If you guys want to support me, the best thing you can do is leave a like or a comment. Sharing it with someone else is also super cool. You can hype the video. I think if you want to go that extra step and want a group to be around, you can consider joining. I'm building out some really sweet stuff for our members, but there's a Discord that I think is probably the most important part of it. There's exclusive interviews, there's all that stuff, but the Discord, right, where I'm not the leader. I mean, I learn things from people all the time in that Discord. It's becoming a really cool space, and I'm not in there as much as I want, but as we get things ramped up, I'm going to be in there. We're starting the Sunday experience where we all try our OBEs on Sundays and talk about it on Mondays. Lots of cool stuff happening in there. So if you want to be a part of that, click join, see if something makes sense. But yeah, without further ado, let's get on with it. Cheers. My whole channel seems to be, at least right now, it's about out-of-body experiences, lucid dreaming, astral projection. I've done some watching, I would say, of your videos, and I know you have some opinions on the differences, and so I would love to actually talk about that, because I watched a video where you hopped into the difference between astral projection and lucid dreaming, and actually they're very, very, I mean, sounds like they're basically, people are calling them different things, but they're pretty much the same thing. I guess control would be one of the main differences. Lucid dreaming, you could control it. Or in beliefs was another thing you brought up, right? Because to astral project, you got to believe in a soul, and you got to believe in some extra things there.
It takes a few extra steps. That's right, yes.
How would you define an out-of-body experience? Do you define that the same as like astral projection, or is that different for you?
I mean, this is one of those strange things, because it changes with whoever you talk to. So recently I had the pleasure of chatting with Dr. Susan Blackmore. So one of the big names in sort of out-of-body experiences. I mean, she was the one of my heroes as a teenager, and she's been down that path kind of based on student out-of-body experience that led her to become a parapsychologist and really get deep into it, she kept coming up against dead ends. And this was someone highly motivated to prove that the soul could leave the body. And as a result of her career, and I don't want to sort of put words into Susan's mouth, so go check her out, anyone who's listening. She essentially gave up the career. She became the biggest name in the UK for that line of research and has now moved more towards consciousness research, because even after a lifetime dedicated to it, she couldn't find any compelling evidence. And I like to save time with my life. And if someone that dedicated and that intelligent has been down that path and is saying it's a dead end, I'll listen. There's no point reinventing the wheel. But for me, I would define an out-of-body experience, or when I talk about it, what I'm saying is someone believing that they've left their body. I think it would be as straightforward as that. Although some people would define it as an experience of leaving the body, which may be psychological, which I can get on board with. Those things certainly happen. Technically every single dream is exactly that. But where I get a bit sort of tied up with this and a bit sort of boggles is why do we need these extra definitions when it's, as far as I'm concerned, quite obviously something that's a psychological event, maybe a dream, or at least very related to a dream, some form of hallucination. I mean, that's what brains do. They model reality. Right now you're not seeing my face or seeing the screen. You're seeing your brain's interpretation of the sensory data. So you're living in a model at all times, and there's nothing to say that model can't glitch. So essentially, this is a form of dream right now. It could glitch. Your positioning within the world modeling system could change. And I've had that exact experience. I don't know whether you've seen my video on out-of-body experiences. I believe it's members only now. But I went for a medical thing. Horrendous. I had to stick a tube down my throat. It was one long gag reflex, really not something I would recommend to anyone. And essentially, 1 minute I'm there on the hospital bed. I decided not to take anything to knock me out. So just me and my willpower against metal camera down the throat. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting on the countertop watching it all happen to me. But because I've been lucid dreaming since I was 5 years old, and I'm aware that the mind can play amazing tricks on itself, I thought, well, either I'm out of my body or it's some form of dream. And I know there are certain things which are inconsistent in dreams. So I looked at some medical posters up on the wall, looked away, looked back. Oh, the text has changed. The clock over the other side of the room, which was a digital clock, looked at it, looked away, back at it again. It was hieroglyphics. So, okay, well, this is exactly what happens in dreams. It's, reality tests. Therefore, even though everything about this, I believe I'm awake and aware, my brain has slipped into some kind of self-defensive dream mechanism, and I'm having a lucid dream. And I assume the conversations I was hearing amongst the medical staff were the true conversations, but there's no way to ever test that unless I'd recorded the whole thing and played it back and compared it against my memory of the experience. And a lot of this, the problem with all these things is it's anecdote, memory, confabulation, is that the right word, where people sort of tell a story over and over again and it changes over time. I used to work as a magician, and one of the things you learn very quickly as a magician is you can do a trick on someone, go off, do your thing, come back a year later, meet the same person again, listen to what they tell you did, and it's entirely different. And you don't correct them because you become a miracle worker in their minds. So anyway, I'm rambling. So hopefully that's not too much of a long-winded way to answer your question.
No, it's interesting, man. It's interesting. And I agree with you. I mean, depending on who I'm talking with, they'll define it the same. Some people get super gnarly in my comments and say it's different. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. But I guess I'm curious on this. So obviously we spend 1/3 of our lives roughly asleep. That's a big chunk of time that most people are completely disconnected from. You've had access at a pretty young age. I know that your story, and maybe you could briefly tell that after this question, because we just dove in. But you've had to relearn it. So I know that it wasn't like completely, you're just this expert from a young age, but how has that affected what you think this all is? Like, how is
Oh,
how has
crikey.
that messed with your brain as far as like why we're here, what's going on? Because you do
Yeah.
seem to come from a scientific kind of like if there's no evidence, then you're just going to kind of keep going this way. How does that
Yeah, so
change
this is
things?
where I think a lot of people misunderstand me. So I'm not some hardened materialist that's out to poo-poo every spiritual belief under the sun, because frankly, let's be humble, none of us really know what the answers are. I think that's kind of my main
That feels
premise is,
safe. Yeah, feels safe
yeah,
to say that for
be
sure.
humble. And frankly, who doesn't want there to be an afterlife, death not to be this horrendous, terrible thing on the horizon? Not to get too heavy too soon into the episode, but so I'm currently grieving. My lovely father passed away 2-3 weeks ago, which is horrendous, and there is nothing more I would like than to think he's off somewhere having some wonderful afterlife experience or reincarnation or whatever. So I'm a human being. I've got all the same desires and drives and wishes as anyone else. Um, but I don't want to delude myself. So I think that's kind of where I come from. It's like, well, I'd like that to be true. Therefore, I should be very cautious with that urge, because the more you want something to be true, the more you're willing to sort of just cherry pick the bits that suit you and ignore the bits that don't. So what I do is I look at my strongest needs and wishes, and they become my challenges. Is like, can I disprove that? And if I can't, great, that's brilliant. Um, but I don't want to be limited by my own beliefs, really. So, am I answering your question? I'm going off on a ramble, as I will do. So,
No, no, no. I guess what I would say back to that is, but you've been doing this for a long time. So do you explore that question? Like when you go out, because I know that
oh,
you talked about a being that was with you from an early age and they kind of continued with you. It was a female, you said, and she
yeah, yeah,
almost was kind of like a coach, which I thought was really fascinating. That consistency of that, right? Like different nights, different
yeah, yeah.
years, this same person keeps showing up. Maybe it's your brain. I could see how your brain would do that. Um, but have you pursued it? Have you said, what is this place? Do you get answers to that? Or is it kind of just, it's never quite hit home for you?
Frankly, it's the only thing I care about. That is my number one question in life: is what the hell is this? And I don't care where the answers come from, as long as they can be replicated and make sense, or not even necessarily make sense, as long as it's not just me stating something and just propping it up with belief. Um, you know, and I don't think that should be a controversial approach, because we use it everywhere else in life, right? If you're buying a car and the salesperson tells you, I don't know how many miles is on the clock. I don't drive, so this is a terrible metaphor. But you'll have a little bit of critical thinking and skepticism there. And this question is much bigger because it's fundamental to what the hell we are. So if I'm going to question reality, I'm going to at least give it the same skepticism I would with buying a car. And that, so yes, I mean, essentially, I'm absurdly philosophical. You can't not be if you've been lucid dreaming since 5. I've explored pretty much every belief system out there. I've been right down the astral projection rabbit hole. You can't see my book collection here, but I've got a bunch of ridiculously rare books on the subject. And what I see again and again with astral projection techniques and lucid dreaming techniques is they're one and the same thing. So if you've got a set of ingredients, a recipe, then you expect the same result from that recipe, right? So why would we have one recipe that leads to 2 different outcomes? One of the different outcomes has to be wrong, or just a miscalculation or misinterpretation. But even if you do say it's just a mental model and it's a psychological event, does that make it less important? Because that doesn't really answer what this is. What is the substrate of reality? Why do we have to think of there's these magical spiritual things and then boring old mundane reality? To me, boring old mundane reality is a spiritual state. It's when you're sitting on the toilet, scratching your bum and thinking about some random news story you've watched. That's a spiritual experience because you're sitting in a mystery. Literally, it's the mundane and the spiritual are not separate. I think there's sort of a weird dualism there, right? So that frustrates me. I find it kind of almost a caricature of spirituality. Like, what would we, if we were to make a film, a Hollywood film of spirituality, we'd have the people in robes and bald heads on a mountain. They'd be the spiritual ones, and people like to fall into those archetypes. But if you look at, say, Taoism, for example, the teachings of Taoism are very much reality is the mystery. That is the great mystery, and flow with it and learn from it and stop trying to define it, because when you try to define it, you're no longer talking about the thing. You're now talking about a model. So again, I don't claim to have any of the answers. I think it's foolish to even try to grasp them, because I think the act of grasping pushes you away from it. But crikey, it's fun, isn't it? Isn't it fun to just constantly ask questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you encounter consistent beings, or is it just that one girl for the most part has been with you, or do anyone else?
I mean, it's a tricky one, because you can, but then, all right, let's answer this in the most boring way first, then we'll get into the interesting stuff. So you could make a very good argument that brains have memory and you can remember things, and why wouldn't that happen in dreams? So there's a term that floats around the lucid dreaming world called persistent realms, where people try to go to these sort of well, it's self-explaining, isn't it? Or persistent characters. But yeah, I could imagine a persistent character day after day. Children have their imaginary friends, right? So do we think imaginary friends are spirits? I suppose some people probably do, but most of us think it's a child's wonderful imagination. So that's the boring answer. A brain has a memory. Dreams are kind of a biological virtual reality. So why wouldn't your memory kick in and be able to replicate the same thing over and over again? Then the interesting answer is, well, what the hell is self? And this is where it gets a bit sort of Tao and Buddhist and all of that kind of thing. Because when you look for self, even just sort of introspection, you can't find it. Wherever you point, it's not there. It's okay. Is it language? No, it's not that. That's just a modeling system. Is it memory? No, that's just also a form of modeling system. Is it qualia? No, that's kind of a non-linguistic modeling system that seems to be one of the base operating systems of the mind, but it's nowhere. And then you sort of take that to the biological aspect and look at how a brain works, and well, no singular part of the brain is self. It seems to be some sort of collection. It's almost like in the same way that England isn't one thing, it's made up of the various cities and the people, etc. Brains like that. So I suppose it's very similar to, where is music? Is it the gaps between the notes? Is it the notes? Is it the instruments? Is it happening?
That's a great analogy.
In the airwaves. So yeah, I do have recurring characters, or dreamlings, I call them.
But how important are they, right? Like, how relevant is it? I don't. Yeah, it's hard to.
And sometimes they're incredibly, naff. They're just like, to use internet slang, sort of NPC style things, where they're just autonomous. I can't say the word, I'm not even going to try. But little robot characters going around bleep bloop saying the obvious stuff. And then you'll get one that completely shocks you, says things you didn't realize or don't even think you know, or give you good advice, or take you off on some magical adventure in other dimensions, or seemingly other dimensions. And then you wake up from that and you question everything. I remember one particularly ridiculous dream, which was a lucid dream, but it wasn't a dream in the way many people would consider it. I was just floating in this sort of vast darkness, kind of a mushroomy kind of under earth strangeness. And then there was this sentience to it all. And it was telling me, we are the descendants of humankind, and your life is just one big simulation we're running, or your world is one big simulation we're running to discover our sort of an ancestor simulation. And it was some kind of AI of the future. that was just making all this happen. And then I sort of woke up from that, and it's like, okay, well, that's pulled the rug from underneath my feet, and I'm gonna have to think about that one for a while. Move over DMT, that's way more weird. So yeah, it's the entire subject's bonkers, and I think if we take ourselves too seriously or get too the science is really limited. The speculation goes off in infinite directions. So once again, it boils back down to humility. Let's just explore with a light touch and try not to, I don't know, ossify things and put them in amber. So it's like, this is the answer. So the moment you start saying this is the answer, you're just fighting over mental models. It's just your model of reality versus someone else's. And it's like, well, neither are correct because they're still just maps. And two maps can show the same territory in different ways. So anyway, ramble.
No, I think it's good. It feels like this whole place is an experiment of beliefs. It's like whatever, because depending on what you believe is, your brain will literally, like you said, it'll cut out complete, I don't know, people, objects, places. I mean, it'll not see it. It won't register. You won't pick it up if you believe certain things. And so it's very interesting. And because we can't answer exactly what this is, it's this whole world where different beliefs are running around and batting into each other. And it's just an interesting place. It's a very interesting. And if it were that simple and you could leave your body, because there's a lot of people who could lucid dream, I think we'd have an answer by now, right?
Yeah.
So it does seem like you're not supposed to find the answer.
I mean, the thing that bothers me with astral projection, I suppose, is that there are some really obvious flaws in the concept. So the kinds of people who do astral projection, this is very broad strokes, and I apologize in advance. I'm going to offend someone somehow in this conversation. So whatever.
I do every time we have a podcast. It's okay.
Yeah. But mostly it's, people with a casual interest in spirituality, and they're doing it kind of as a bit of a hobby in life, or I mean, there are some serious researchers, but do you know who? There's a group that really should be super into astral projection, which is blind people. Because what astral projection is saying that you can leave your body and experience the world supposedly correctly. I'm sure there'll be clever arguments in the comments. But if that's true, and you're physically blind, and there is this option to learn to do something that will give you astral eyes, surely the blind community would be the most highly motivated people to develop that skill, and then blindness would go away. And why isn't that happening? I'm not saying it's definitely not true, but I just don't know why that's not happening if it is true. And the only argument would be, well, the astral eyes don't see the world correctly. And then that brings us back to, well, what is it seeing? And why is that not the same as a dream? So it's whenever I come up against paradoxes like that, or things that don't add up, that's when I get a bit sort of, well, I want the truth, and this doesn't match reality. So
that's fascinating. I've never heard anybody say that, and I think that's actually really interesting to think about. Obviously, like you said, there'll be some clever comments. There'll be people who say, well, that's because, and yeah, sure. But that is an interesting thing to think about, why that's not going on. I'm sure it is some people, but yeah, because then you start talking about remote viewing, and there are definitely, I mean, many interviews of people who very much so claim that they're able to do it, and they're documented, and it's a whole thing, right? And plenty of people hop out and see their own body, they're in their own place, but then there's also this element that it's never exactly the same. Like, I've heard that a lot too. It's like, it's kind of like a weird, it's like the dresser on that side is on this side, or it's a different color, and it's like, all that stuff's kind of weird. Like, why does that happen?
And that's exactly the same as a wake-initiated lucid dream. So I don't want to assume that the viewers know exactly what a lucid dream is. I think part of the problem is definitions. And so I think lucid dreaming, a lot of people misunderstand what it is. So maybe it's a good idea to
let's define it.
Correctly.
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah. Let's define it.
So a lucid dream, well, they come in two flavors. You can either fall asleep consciously, maintaining your awareness into REM. So, and that's a very peculiar experience because it matches astral projection entirely.
You're
Your
talking about the
bodily
body shutting
vibration.
down. It feels like you can hit the vibration stage. You can.
Yeah, all of that stuff can happen. I mean, it can be instantaneous as well. You can be 1 minute in bed, next minute somewhere else. But equally, you can float out of your body and be in your room, and everything will look the same, but not quite the same. Clocks, etc. So that's one form of lucid dream, and no, that's provable that it's a psychological event. You get someone into the sleep lab, you wire them up, and you can see they're in REM, but their report will sound identical to astral projection experience. But what I think most people think a lucid dream is having a dream and then realizing you're dreaming within it. And then there's another group of people who just think vivid dreams are lucid dreams, or a vague sense of knowing that you're dreaming. So a lucid dream is very specifically that you know that it's a dream, with full cognitive abilities. In boring scientific terms, and not entirely accurate, it's your prefrontal cortex comes online during REM when normally it wouldn't be otherwise. So your critical thinking skills, your sense of self really just fires up during the dream, and then you're in this perfect model of the world. Perfect as in it feels the same as waking life. There might be glitches in how things operate, gravity, for example, but other than that, it feels identical to any other lived experience. So that it's important to define that, because I think a lot of people lessen what the lucid dream experience would be like, or they think it's kind of somehow not as good as astral projection or OBEs. But every wake-initiated lucid dream I've had has been unbelievably exciting, because 1 minute you're on the sofa napping. I've got to the age where I nap a lot, and then you're floating up, you're watching your body and just thinking, crikey, this is genuinely, it feels magical. And if I didn't know that it was a psychological event, I would immediately assume I'd left my body. So again, a lot of people are shouting over definitions and misunderstandings and all that kind of thing. So
Okay, so Daniel, you do not have to answer this if we don't want to. But
sure.
with your pops, have you tried recently to
Oh
like
yeah,
have you?
yeah.
Oh, okay. And so
Yeah, so don't worry about offending me on that, because one of
okay,
the things I like to do with how I teach is humanize the experience, right? So there's a tendency, and I will get to your question, I'm just going to couch it in context first. There's a tendency to other these experiences. So again, it's a bit like the monk on the mountain that we were talking about before. But I'm very much of the belief that all experiences are important, that you need to integrate this into everything you are. If you're truly seeking some kind of answer to the universe, it must be true in all moments. So therefore, I hate the word authentic, but be as authentic as you can. So something as raw as this, if I want to talk about it honestly. So yes, that was one of the very first things I wanted to do. I couldn't do it straight away because I had a very strange experience, which I suppose is a grief reflex. I don't know, because fortunately I've not lost a parent before this. But REM stopped. I was going to bed and it was just deep nothingness. But as I would wake from that, after maybe 3 or 4 days of, probably a bit longer, maybe a whole week of just no REM at all, no dreaming, I'd be finding myself in the what's called the hypnopompic state, which is where, as you're coming out of sleep, which is very fluid and strange and hallucinatory, and your mind's sort of making connections it wouldn't do otherwise. And I'd float in that state and assess this kind of time travel nothingness that everyone's experienced every time they have deep sleep, that we weirdly take for granted, right? We're just all happy with just not existing for hours on end. And it's a very simple point, but that nothingness, that fertile ground of being that is nothing but potential as well, that is the same place you were before you were born. It's identical as an experience. One can assume, therefore, it's the same place you go after death. Again, that's an assumption, but we certainly know it about before birth, and we know it about sleep. So I found, oddly, that more reassuring than the later lucid dreams I've had with my father, because that to me is where he is in that fundamental canvas of reality where self and everything dissolves. And it's really sort of reignited my love of Taoism. So if I had to define my spiritual perspective, it's closer to Taoism than anything else. I've always thought of Taoism as sort of Buddhism without the bells and whistles. But that's kind of the Tao, and I found that far more reassuring. So now every time I'm unconscious and not dreaming, or at least retrospectively, I look at that as returning to, I want to say ancestral space, but I suppose the potential of all life and all beings is there, the canvas of reality. However, I did finally have some dreams, and fortunately caught some of them, converted them into lucid dreams, and invoked the presence of my father. And on an emotional level, incredibly rewarding. I mean, it's to be able to hug someone again when you know they've gone forever is just, you can't put a price on something like that, right? It's just unbelievably meaningful. But there's a depth to that as well, which is, even if you're the most hardened atheist and you don't believe anything about spirits, what is observable and reproducible is that in dream space, the mind can generate absolute perfect replicas of deceased loved ones. And what does that mean? It means everyone you meet, everyone you interact with, you're placing a little bit of yourself in another neural network of their brain. So we kind of become like cloud computing. So right now, well, this is the first time we've met, you're starting to live in my brain. So I'll be able to dream of you with all the information I get from this conversation, and vice versa. And everyone who watches your videos and mine, they're doing the same. So we spread ourselves out amongst many brains. And so even if there is no soul or anything like that, the essence of people does go on, and they exist within us. And even in the most boring scientific way, if the essence of a person is just firing neurons and patterns, well, then what's the difference between my neurons firing or your neurons firing and creating a model of me? It's, again, that even on a really boring level, that's fascinating and wonderful and beautiful. We all carry each other within ourselves. Dreams kind of remind you that you're a universe builder, which, I mean, so exciting.
What a line. What a line. That's awesome. I mean, and almost to your point a little bit there too, is even if it's just your brain firing off things and it's a perfect replica, still how powerful was that, right? To be able to sit there, and you said rewarding, but I mean, even if it technically wasn't, it still felt real.
Yeah.
It still was probably a little bit of closure, or, or just reassurance, maybe not closure, but just the ability to, if you wanted to again, that maybe you can say hello and talk for a little bit, even
Yeah,
if that's a
and
model.
there's a danger with language as well, because I use it casually, the statement, just your brain. But again, that's dismissive. It's dismissive language. What is a brain? It's this unexplainable, absurd complexity. Billions of neurons, trillions of synapses that has emerged out of essentially the chaos of infinity. I mean, if you want spiritual, if you want deep, then a brain itself is a piece of magic, like a genuine piece of magic. It's just, it's maybe not Harry Potter style, but how has that complexity come about out of whatever this is? So yeah, we have to be careful, because I think there's a tendency in certainly Western culture to dismiss, and I do it all the time, dismiss scientific answers as kind of whatever, even if it's just a brain. But really, when you think about it, that's as mystical as any enlightenment experience. It's
I
fun to talk about these things. It's so
It
much
is.
fun.
I love it too. I sometimes when I'm sitting alone and I sit there and I really, because I'm obviously really enjoy talking about lucid dreams and out of body stuff and all of that. But sometimes when I really want to get the where I get the most tripped up is when I go like, but what are we like? The fact that we can talk right now is so strange. I mean, that you and I are just we're on the other side of the world or whatever's going on. We're
Yeah,
having a conversation that is so trippy on its own, and we're all looking for these kind of yeah, these out of body moments or these myself included. I fall into that. But this right here is so
yeah,
trippy and beautiful and all the things. It's like, whoa, this is crazy that we're able to do this.
yeah,
When you really like sit on that for a second. And I know obviously someone hearing this is like, but I'm serious. It can trip you up pretty good if you really sit about like, what is this? Like this
yeah.
reality right here, right now is fascinating. It's
And
fascinating.
you don't want to be a spiritual dopamine addict, right? Because
Mm,
we find the fringe subjects exciting because they're fringe, because they're out of the ordinary. But we forget. Oh, here's a sort of mental trick I like to play. It's one of the reasons I have alien themes all throughout my channel. Partly because I'm a sci-fi nerd, but imagine you're a group of alien scientists, and you could have 1 minute seeing through your eyes. They would spend the equivalent of billions on that project to be able to see 1 minute of your life, even the most boring minute of your life, because to them that would be pure novelty, the strangest thing they've ever seen. Yet we take it for granted. So we mustn't mistake novel for deeper or more meaningful. It's just we develop this blindness to the magic in everything. And I think this is why when you read sort of the ancient texts and the spiritual masters, half the time they're saying, go sit and look at a leaf or, think about something simple. And because when you do, it becomes fractal and everything is, you stare at a leaf long enough and suddenly you think about, where did this come from? It's sunlight originally and blah, blah. Just, I'm not going to go down the entire path, but everything is fractal. And if you just need to take the time, don't be a dopamine addict. Don't just go for novelty. That stuff's interesting, but everything's interesting. It's just a matter of perspective. And you learn that very quickly with lucid dreaming, because when you realize you're a universe modeling system, and then you start sort of questioning your own archetypal bias. So if I want to get a spiritual experience in a lucid dream, I would have done gone looking for the dreamling that looked the most spiritual, conjure up Buddha or something like that. But I also know that that's just a mental model, and I could equally conjure up, I can't think of anyone to say without being annoying someone. A clown. A clown. You conjure up a clown. It's the same mental model, the same architecture, the same mystery behind both. But what you're doing is projecting assumptions and expectations onto them. So it's really a mirror of what you believe. So there is a real danger of becoming trapped by your own archetypal prison. And I think what most spiritual texts, when you remove all of the cultural baggage, they point at deconstruct assumption, see the now as clearly as you can. And for me, that's the true beauty of lucid dreaming, because if you follow the path long enough, if you get past the initial arcade game, fire lasers out of your nipples and fly to the moon kind of stuff, once you get past that, then you start to realize, well, hold on a second. It's all illusion, including myself, including thought, including everything. How am the mystery just goes on. And it becomes a deeply philosophical. I prefer the word philosophical to spiritual because it's a bit less loaded, and language, again, is a modeling system that traps us. So, yeah, it's unbelievably deep, this subject. And so anyone who's interested in lucid dreaming, don't think of it as just, a fun little quirk. You're basically staring the mystery of reality and self straight in the face and asking it to scream at you, and it will scream at you, and you won't know what the hell you're hearing, but it sounds beautiful and terrifying all at the same time, and you will want to keep exploring. And yeah, it's such a wonderful subject. So, yeah, I'm rambling again. I get too
No, you're not.
excited.
You're not at
So,
all. You're not at all. It's one of the things that came to my mind when you were saying like all the spiritual teachers. Everybody talks about. And we'll move on from this, but everybody talks about the experience. It's the experience, and it's like imagine winning the lottery, and the lottery is not money. It's an experience like this, and we spend all our time trying to figure out how we won the ticket, or how we got the ticket, or why we have the winning numbers. And it's like
yeah,
just enjoy the experience. That is regardless where you came from, you're here now and you get this moment to forget where you came from, probably for good reason, I would imagine. And you're here to like this is everything. And it's just interesting
yeah.
that 99.9% of us, myself included, again, I'm not immune to this, but all sit around saying, why are we here? That's interesting. And it is one of those things that's I've only been doing this 6 months, and by this I mean podcast really deep diving on this stuff. And I am already kind of getting to that place where it's like, well, I enjoy talking about it. I'll probably never not enjoy it, but maybe don't take it so like, I think when I first started, it was like, I gotta know the truth. I gotta know the truth. I gotta know the truth. And the more I talk, the more I kind of like, maybe that's your problem. Maybe you just need to just enjoy it because you enjoy it, and spread whatever, like let people take what they're going to take from these conversations, but
Yeah.
maybe not take it so serious and enjoy
I think,
it.
yeah. I mean, there's the archetype of the sort of laughing sage, right? Just finding Alan Watts is a great example of that. Constantly laughing away at his statements about reality and how silly it all is. And what are we with? We are the mystery dancing with itself. Essentially, it's so hard not to sound pretentious with this, but that's the truth. And take a concept like infinity. We can't get our heads around the concept of infinity, but it looks like that's what we're stuck in. And good luck trying to to solve the mystery of infinity, because there is nothing to solve. It is just everything that is possible happens.
Yeah.
So the answer becomes will become a new prison you can lock yourself in. And I think that's a real danger of the human mind, because we've evolved to survive. We've evolved to find patterns, but those things can become sort of metastasized and become bad for us, right?
Hmm.
So try to find the joy somehow. I suppose that's mainly what I try to teach with lucid dreaming these days, because most of the control systems in dream space are about deconstructing assumptions, deconstructing how the mind works, and not just believe, because basically everything's a form of dream. Your concept of self is a story your brain tells itself. And that can be warped very easily. Going back to sort of my magician days, and to give a practical example, one thing magicians do at the beginning and the end of an act is tell people what's happened. And what they'll do is they'll tell people a distorted view of what happened. So you can say something like, I passed you the card, I didn't touch the card again, even though you might have done. That you give them the narrative, and the narrative becomes king, and then they only remember the narrative, and then they've got a miracle. But we do that with self. So, for example, I used to think of myself as an incredibly shy person. My teenage years were awkward as hell, until lucid dreaming sort of taught me over time, okay, you're a modeling system, you're a storyteller, you're a jungle of stories. Is that a story? Is shyness a story you're telling yourself? And you've basically put a spell on yourself with that. And it was nonsense. And then once you see the story as a story, you can choose to rewrite it or reconfigure it. So really, this, for me, lucid dreaming is a doorway to psychological freedom. Again, sounds really pretentious, but it's
Hmm.
genuinely true when you think of it as more than just hack your brain, get lucid tonight, which is what most people teach it as, right? So, um,
Yeah.
but I think there's more to it than that.
For sure, for sure. Okay, so we're like, I don't even know how long we're into this. What, 40 minutes? So
Yeah,
you are obviously you are a lucid dreaming coach, internationally recognized. You have a book called "Are You Dreaming? Exploring Lucid Dreams." We'll link everything down below, but it's a
great,
guide,
thank you.
right? Um,
Yep.
and I wanted to definitely touch on this because we talked about it in email. But is there a technique that you would give out that you would say, because you give a lot on your channel, and so obviously we'll link that
Yeah.
too. Like you're always giving out techniques. Um, I guess my question to you would be this: is it about the technique, or is there a mindset that's better to understand? Because it seems like there's a lot of techniques, but is there something
Yeah.
you would say you need prior to that you would want my audience to understand before even diving in?
It's a tricky one. There are certainly behaviors which are beneficial. So, frankly, I use the word technique mostly because that's what people are searching for.
I do the same
People,
thing, by the way. I'll do
yeah,
astral projection because it has 100 times the search volume. So I'm like, well, sorry,
exactly,
guys.
yeah. So it's yeah, you have to work with how the world is, right? So, people want a recipe. So technique is essentially follow these simple steps, get to the outcome. That's really silly. I mean, it couldn't be more silly. I mean, because in order for that to be true, we'd all have to be clones and incredibly simple. And that's obviously not true. Your brain, my brain work entirely differently. There are obviously some crossovers and some things like dream journaling, which is beneficial for everyone. But really, this is a case of introspection, metacognition, learning about how your mind works. The techniques kind of point you in that direction. The good techniques do. There's a lot of just nonsense techniques as well, which people just throw out there because Reddit exists. So I've just offended a whole bunch of people right there. But yeah, so I suppose they're like training wheels. It's like if you've never thought philosophically before, then questioning 10 times a day, could this be a dream? Is like the first little tip of the iceberg of philosophical thought because you've never had that thought before. You've never engaged in that kind of metacognition. But really what we want in the long run is the brain to default to metacognition. So when you're caught up in the middle of an argument, for example, rather than be blinded by the narrative, which is essentially what a non-lucid dream is as well, you're caught up in a narrative without any reflection, you learn to reflect in moments where you wouldn't reflect otherwise. And so everything is kind of pointing in that direction. And the hundreds of techniques that exist out there, certainly the ones I share, are generally trying to give multiple different ways to reach that goal, with the understanding that the average person has no understanding of what the subject is and they want a simple step-by-step guide to start with. But I'll give you that to start with, but just don't expect that to be the final answer. That's kind of just the first test. If you
Okay.
can, yeah. So not to annoy people, but it's just not one of those subjects. It's a bit like trying to. It's very similar to learning a musical instrument. There are all sorts of structured ways you can learn, but inevitably, if you're going to master that instrument, that becomes intuitive and organic and fluid, and a true artist is no longer constrained by the rules, right? So, yeah, it's a weird one because if I didn't use the word technique, I wouldn't have a channel, essentially. It drives me nuts. And then people complain about using
Same.
clickbait.
I know. Trust
Yeah,
me, I get
it's
it.
like every YouTuber doesn't like clickbait as much as the viewers.
I wish I
It's
could just literally put in the title what we talked about. And it's not
yeah,
that we don't. So like, for example, like I'll pick I just had this happen. Someone was a little upset with how I put a title and I said, it's one of the guests. And I was like, look, yes, we talked about a bunch of different things. I totally get it. But this was the bulk of the conversation. And if they don't click, we lose. And sometimes as a podcaster, I feel responsibility to make sure that your video gets the best chance at getting some views. Like I really want that for you. A lot of the people I have on have a course or a book and it's like, man, I got to do
yeah,
my job and play the role. I totally agree though. And he brought up a good point that reminded me like, okay, you don't want to you don't want to lie. You don't want to mislead. You gotta, there's a
absolutely.
line for sure. But
Yeah,
there's a game too that I don't think people fully understand that you have to play. And if you don't play the game, nobody wins. Nobody gets to hear these
yeah,
amazing guests and your amazing techniques. It just doesn't happen. So you do
yeah.
always kind of have to walk that line. So it's unfortunate.
It's a flaw of human psychology, right? We want
Mhm.
drama, we want curiosity, and we all. I say I hate clickbait, but then when I'm scrolling through YouTube, I know the dramatic title with the exciting thumbnail is going to catch the lizard part of my brain, and it's going to click before I even think.
It
And
still
then when I've
gets you and I, and we're in it, and we're like, do this. It still
yeah,
gets us.
and as long as the work that you're doing after that point, once the lizard brain has been satiated, then give the full brain the deep, wholesome meal. So again, it's don't judge a book by its cover. If you picked up the book because the cover was garish, that's on you. So, but is the book good? That's the question people should be asking. Anyway, we're getting off onto creator side quest here.
Yes,
So
yes,
let's
yes.
get back to the subject.
So what would be something that you would say as a, because again, you do list a lot of techniques and we kind of
Yeah.
clarified, we did a little disclaimer there. It's not fully about the technique, but what would be one that you've seen a lot of people have success with that you would feel comfortable sharing on the channel?
Okay. It's get ready for your watch time to drop rapidly at this point, because it's not an exciting answer. Dream journaling. Dream journaling is the way, and frankly, the kind of godfather of lucid dreaming, a guy called Marie-Jean-Léon Lecoq de Marquis de Herve de Saint-Denis. Thank you for having that name, because that's annoying. But he was a French aristocrat back in 1867, I think it was, who wrote the first book on lucid dreaming before lucid dreaming had a name. There were no techniques. And of course, I know in the comments people are going to be saying, but yeah, the Tibetan Buddhists were doing it centuries beforehand. Yes, but the Western world, this was the first example of someone discovering lucid dreaming independently. He had curiosity in a dream journal. That was it. So a dream journal isn't what people think it is. People tend to think, oh, write down your dreams, that's it, done. A dream journal is your window into dream space, your window into your psychology. So when you're writing a dream journal, it's not to record and forget. It is to have something you reflect on again and again and pull apart, look for who you were in the dreams. So we're not trying to change the dreams, we're trying to change who you are in the dreams. That's the difference between a lucid dream and a non-lucid dream is you. So look at your dreams, go, okay, get to know that version of you. Okay, dream me is anxious, or dream me gets angry really easily, or dream me is really distracted by such and such. And then go, okay, well, there's going to be an analog of dream me in waking life. So if dream me is angry all the time, I'm going to start focusing on when I'm angry and turn those into metacognitive moments where I'm reflecting on, could this be a dream now? So it's that deeper level of sort of analyzing what I call the weather systems of your mind. So dreams are constantly morphing as you evolve through your life. So again, dream journals aren't something you do for 1 week, give up, and then forget about it. It's an ongoing litmus test as to what your brain is doing that you adapt to your practice to. So your dreams are your best teacher. Whatever you're dreaming about, make that what you focus on for being more mindful and metacognitive in those moments. And really, that alone, if you do it with genuine fascination and motivation, will get you lucid. All of the expensive courses, everything else, you can throw them in the bin. And I can understand how self-destructive that is to say that, but frankly, it's true.
And if you don't think I'm clipping that part up, Daniel,
yeah.
you are wrong.
Yeah. Brilliant. But the thing is, it's hard to do that because the subject itself is really simple. It's a simple concept. Find patterns, train yourself to respond in certain ways to those patterns. But life is complicated. Your brain is complicated. You're not as aware as you think you are. And the moment you start I'll give a simple example. If I asked you to clap your hands every time you saw a blue car, you would miss more than you would catch. Not because it's a complex task, but because your brain is just constantly awash with thoughts, you're distracted, life is moving fast. So all of the other techniques are ways to train the brain in the right way so that you're less distracted, more focused, more present in the moment. So courses and YouTube channels are still good. So that's me reeling it back in. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's amazing. And I just want to clarify, just so I understand this for myself here. So you're saying what you dream about is it's a really good insight into what you care about. So are you saying during the waking day, like when you get in, if it's an argument that you're always dreaming about, you pay attention to those moments so that because you dream about those the most in that dream, you'll remember like, oh, this is one, like focusing on that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So that's the kind of the first step. is find the really obvious parts of your dreams and then make them it's dangerous to sort of think in terms of dreams and waking life. You kind of have to use that language. But what we really want to do is to create a state where the mind is always open to it being either. So you would say to yourself, from now on, when I'm angry, for example, that is going to inspire the question, the metacognition.
I really love that. I had someone else on, and he said he did this has been said a bunch of different ways, but I think you just broke that down in a way that's really unique, because someone will say like, oh, in waking day, just constantly check, like look at a fridge, look away, look back. Is it still a fridge? Cool. But you're talking about, why don't you just analyze your dreams? That's why the journal is there, so that you can see, because you're naturally you will tend to dream about specific things more than others, and to pay attention to those moments, because that will trigger it. That's brilliant, honestly. It's actually really, really great advice.
And to be really careful, again, just to reiterate that important statement. So you do not want to think in terms of dreams versus waking life, because then you create an assumption, and we already have the assumption. The assumption that stops us lucid dreaming, oversimplified, is that we're always awake. And we take that assumption into dreams, therefore we never question them. So dissolve the barriers between the two and just be like, how do I respond when these events happen, regardless? And the response must be, okay, what is this? Is it a dream based on sensory input, which we call waking life? Or is it a dream based on mental activity, which is what we call dreams at night? But from a brain perspective, the two are identical. It's a modeling system. So don't fall into assumption traps. The language is so important with this. The moment
so you're saying, don't say, because I want to get this right, don't say, am I awake right now or am I asleep right now? Like, don't start doing that in those moments. Like, let's use anger as the example. I dream about anger all the time. So then the next time I come across anger, I say, you don't want to say, you should train it to start thinking about the act of anger rather than saying the terms, am I awake or asleep?
Not quite right. No. So what I'm trying to sort of imply is the words don't matter quite so much. It's more the mindset. So when you catch yourself being angry, right? Okay, I've found the target, anger. I'm in it right now. I'm stepping back. So a good way to do that is to think, okay, let's say you're arguing. I'm in an argument, but I'm just going to put that aside and just have a moment to reflect. So a good way to frame that is, well, this could be a dream, in which case, do I want to waste that dream arguing? What an utter waste of time. I'm all het up and I'm arguing with something which isn't even real. So anyway, let's step back from that, have a moment of mindfulness, I suppose is one way to put it. And then, without assumption, without expectation, with true humility, interrogate whatever this moment is and try to establish, is it a dream? Is it behaving like a dream? Or is it behaving like reality or waking life reality? So essentially, the trigger, anger, inspires metacognition grounded in humility. And then you're essentially doing an experiment. What is this? The question really is, what is this? And then answer that to the best of your ability. And there are some really simple ways to do that, like pinching your nose and trying to breathe through it, what people call reality tests. But doing that alone, without that mindset, that can just become habitualized and you don't really give it your full attention. And then you'll have dreams about pinching your nose where you immediately just go on and continue being non-lucid. Because what we're changing is the state you're in. The state you need to be in is cognitive, mindful, metacognitive, and humble. That's really the key state, which is way easier to say than to do, because I can guarantee the next time you're angry, that's going to be the last thing on your mind. So there's all sorts of tactics you can do to sort of get yourself to notice that.
That's really good, Daniel. And I think it allows people to like also put a little time to this. I think people just nowadays, right? They just want it. They want to hear this technique and have it happen tonight. It's like, well, let's let's breathe a little bit. Let's put a little time behind this, put a little strategy. I like that you said get a journal and then start, keeping track of these things and let it unfold. And then
Yeah,
you'll get better at it. Like anything, it's a skill that you got to build. You don't go to the gym once and you're ripped, right? You got to be
yeah,
consistent with it. And
exactly.
you got to do that. So let's say they figured out you're in a dream now. Do you ever use commands like clarity now, or like do you ever have to do that, like where it's blurry and it's kind of, or is it usually pretty, you're there for the most part?
Again, so people get angry with me for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. So phrases like clarity now, the argument people use is it's the intention behind the phrases that matters, which I would agree with.
Mm,
Um, but again, we're ignoring so many variables. Dream space psychological states are just variable soup. What have you had for lunch and dinner, and how much exercise have you done, and what emotional states you're in, and what are your hormones doing, what memories are bubbling around in your unconscious mind. There's so much.
mm,
So the experience you have, let's say you're in a dream, it's quite dark. We don't know why that is. Is it the end of REM? Is it the beginning of REM? Is there another factor there? So simply saying clarity now is kind of, it's a caricature. It's like trying to do a spell. To me, that's just absurdly silly. I would say instead of trying to push the dream, observe and learn. So if you're not getting clarity, don't get all het up. Don't try to immediately force. Just go, okay, what is going on here? What can I learn from it? Relax into it. Um, People would like to think of lucid dreams as control, but really lucid dreams are knowledge. It's the knowledge of what's happening. So increase your knowledge. And as you increase your knowledge over time, then control becomes innate, because you're like, okay, it's dark because, oh yeah, this must be the beginning of REM. I've had lots of dreams like this, and the dream was starting that way. So I just have to wait. I'll just sit here and tap my fingers, and the dream will form around me. Um, that's a really simplified version of it. But over the years, that knowledge builds and builds and builds. It becomes integrated into how you behave, and it's a very subtle reprogramming or pruning of your psychology, so that control becomes something you are rather than you do.
mm,
It's kind of, again, I'm talking a lot about Taoism recently, but it's very similar to the concept of Wu Wei, which is sort of actionless action.
mm.
And I won't go on about that, but look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's Yeah, so control is one of those myths about lucid dreaming. I would say dream control is a separate subject, whereas lucidity is about knowledge of this. Um, Hopefully that answered the question.
That's really good. Again,
In a
it's like a
very, very
process.
rambly mood today.
No, it's a process where it sounds like, again, you can't just go to the gym once. It's, if your dream's blurry, you got some things to work through. You got to start looking around, like what's going on. Like I would imagine all of us, like you said too, just have different levels of chaos. Like some people probably have some kind of guard. I always picture like a junkyard and like, like the Rottweiler running around. And the second you hop that fence, it's going to come running at you and you got to figure out what
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah.
Is that your, I don't know, whatever that is. Some people get scared is what I'm saying. There's a thing there. And then you got to figure that out. Like, what is that? You got to look it
Yeah.
in the face, I would imagine. Some people probably don't experience that at all. And it's actually relatively happy, right? But it probably has to do with how well you deal with your life and what's going on.
Yeah.
So
Just use your attention. I mean, that's the one thing you really can control at all times, is where am I putting my attention?
your
How am I
awareness.
using that? And if you're just gently putting your attention on, okay, what can I learn from this? It's subtle, but it's incredibly powerful. And I would say that's where true power in all of life comes from, because then you're noticing the things other people don't notice, because they're so wrapped up in ego and pushing and striving. Just witness, learn. It's a very gentle way of increasing everything that matters. And also just takes a lot of the stress out of living,
Mhm.
because you suddenly realize, yeah, you spend all your life fighting for things and pushing, and a lot of the times you just need to relax into it. It will flow naturally. And again, I'm sounding like a bonkers hippie at this point, but some things are just true. So,
I like it. I got to tell you, this was a lot of fun for me. I like different perspectives, and I think you actually bring a really refreshing one where you're not, you're just careful about claiming certain things. You're very, I don't know. I just really enjoy it. So I think a lot of people will love this episode. I'm going to link everything you got down below, of course. But is there anything else you'd like to let, I guess, leave the dance with? I mean, is there anything you'd like to say as far as lucid dreams that you want to leave with the audience before we bounce out today?
I suppose just remember that your dreams are you on the most fundamental level. You're watching your mind just blossom in ways that it doesn't at any other time, and don't let that gift go wasted. You literally every night you have these lessons and insights that will transform you if you let them. And don't hyperfixate on outcome. Focus on what it is. What can you learn? The moment you start setting up a sort of, I must have lucid dreams or I must astral project, then you've created a win-lose scenario. You can have a forever win, because if your intention is to learn and you stay open to that, everything is a win. You relax. Lucidity becomes easier. All the other altered states become easier. Don't set up dichotomies that are unnecessary. I suppose that's, yeah. But also, if you're interested in this stuff, come over to my channel and check it out.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Thank
Thank you so
below,
much.
I suppose. So
yeah, I'll link it below. Thank you so much for being here. I spent some good time on your channel. You're always giving out techniques. You have a really good personality. You're fun to watch. You're awesome, man. So thanks for being here. And thanks for sharing that with my audience. I really appreciate that.
oh, you are also awesome, and I've had a lovely time. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. I will let you know when this goes live. Shoot me anything you want me down below. Otherwise, I'll just link your channel, your website, all that good stuff, your books. But if there's anything specific, send it my way.
Yeah, just drop me a link when it's all ready to go. I don't think there's anything. I'm not really much into the promoting side of things these days. It's just doing it for the love.
I got you. So, I'll do you justice. Promise.
Nice one. Cheers, Jeff.
Cheers.
Really good to meet you.
Yeah,
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.